Breaking news is unfolding right now, and what you're about to hear may be one of the most unprecedented military operations of our lifetime. In the early hours of January the 3rd, explosions rocked the skies over Caracas, Venezuela's capital. Military aircraft flew low, targets were hit, and within hours, the world realized this wasn't just another regional conflict. This was something much bigger. Around 2 a.m. local time, the United States launched a large-scale military operation inside Venezuelan territory. Multiple military facilities were struck in what the U.S. officials later described as a highly coordinated operation. Satellite imagery confirmed it. Buildings were destroyed. Equipment was wiped out. This was not symbolic. This was strategic. But the strikes were not the real objective. They were a distraction. Because while Venezuela's military was responding to explosions across the country, elite U.S. Special Operations Forces were already on the ground. Their target was not a base. It was the President of Venezuela, Nicolás Maduro, and his wife, Cilia Flores. They were captured in a covert overnight raid. Within hours, they were removed from Venezuelan soil, transported by U.S. military assets, and flown out of the country. For the first time in recent history, a sitting president of a sovereign nation was seized and brought to the United States to face criminal charges. President Donald Trump confirmed the operation shortly after, announcing that Maduro was alive, in U.S. custody, and would stand trial on charges including narco-trafficking and corruption. The shockwaves were immediate. Russia called the operation deeply concerning and demanded clarification. Cuba condemned it outright. European leaders urged restraint while acknowledging that Maduro's legitimacy had long been disputed. In Venezuela itself, reactions were split. Some citizens flooded the streets demanding Maduro's return. Others celebrated what they saw as the fall of a dictator who had ruled through economic collapse, corruption, and repression. Meanwhile, Venezuela's vice president was ordered to assume temporary control, though the stability of that transition remains quite unclear. To understand why this moment matters, you need to understand how Venezuela arrived at this point. Once it was one of the richest countries in Latin America, but it collapsed under decades of corruption, centralized control, and economic mismanagement. Hyperinflation erased savings overnight. Food shortages became normal. Medicine became scarce. Millions, a third of the country, fled in one of the largest mass migrations in modern history. Nicolás Maduro inherited power after Hugo Chavez, but unlike Chavez, he ruled during total economic freefall. Elections were widely disputed. Opposition leaders were jailed or forced into exile. Sanctions tightened. The country slowly became isolated from the global economy. For years, the United States accused Maduro's government of being directly involved in international drug trafficking networks, labeling Venezuela a narco-state. And for years, nothing changed, nothing was done, until now. This was not a regime change through sanctions. This was not a proxy war. This was not a covert influence campaign. This was a direct seizure of power through force. In modern international law, this almost never happens. Even during wars, world leaders are typically removed internally, overthrown domestically, or negotiated out. They are not captured by foreign militaries and flown across the world to face justice. That is why legal experts around the globe are calling this a historic rupture in how power is exercised internationally. Because if this sets a precedent, borders stop being guarantees. And then came the statement that stunned the world. President Trump announced that the United States would temporarily oversee Venezuela's governance until a peaceful transition of power could be established. In his words, the U.S. could not allow another bad actor to take control. That alone would have been historic, but it didn't stop there. Trump also addressed Venezuela's oil. Venezuela sits across the largest proven oil reserves on Earth, far larger than the United States' more than 300 billion barrels, more than Saudi Arabia. On paper, that Earth is worth trillions of dollars. In reality, most of it has never been extracted. The infrastructure is broken. Refineries are outdated. Equipment is unusable. Corruption siphoned off funding for decades. That is why Venezuela, despite its great national wealth, became poor. Trump stated plainly that the United States would take control of those resources, rebuild the infrastructure, and oversee production. According to his proposal, profits would be split between the Venezuelan people, Venezuelans living abroad, and the United States as reimbursement for rebuilding the country's oil infrastructure. Whether that plan is realistic, legal, or enforceable remains an open question. Because rebuilding an oil economy does not happen overnight. It took years to destroy, and it will take years to rebuild. And it will take billions of dollars. And it requires stability that Venezuela has not seen in decades. Even now, members of the former regime insist that they are ready to defend the country. Meanwhile, world leaders are not just reacting, they are calculating. Because if the United States can remove a president in South America, it raises questions everywhere else. Russia is watching. China is watching. Iran is watching. Smaller nations are watching very closely. This operation sends a message that military reach is no longer theoretical. It is executable. And that reality changes diplomatic behavior overnight. Some leaders will harden defenses. Others may accelerate weapons production. Others may quietly attempt negotiations they once refused. Power dynamics shift fastest when fear enters the equation. So what does this mean? Is it liberation? Is it intervention? Is it a violation of international law? Or is it simply the clearest message yet that power, not rules, defines in the modern world? One thing is certain. World leaders everywhere are watching closely. Because if a superpower can remove a president overnight, no office is untouchable. And global balance has just shifted. This is BSA Heroes. Please like, subscribe, and hit the notification button. And we'll see you next time.